Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Assalamu alaikum, my brothers and sisters. If you're watching this video and it's Salah time, please pause it and go pray and come back when you're done. Please check out the description section of this video to donate to Palestine and to support the channel. As you will more than likely be aware of, Muslims have successfully boycotted Piers Morgan's show because of his recent Islamophobic rants and general treatment of Muslim guests on his show, which has left him quite bitter and has damaged his brand somewhat. Piers had his pal Ben Shapiro on his show again for around an hour-long segment in which Piers actually challenged Ben on Israel's brand new and previous war crimes, which Shapiro denied and justified in usual genocidal Zionist fashion. But before you get all excited about Piers seeing the light, and although I agree with the points he brought up in regards to Israel committing war crimes, it seemed like an attempt to win over his now estranged Muslim guests and viewership, as you will see in the clip I show you. I say that because, unlike Piers' interview with Abdul Wahid, with whom Piers flew off the handle and was extremely uncivil and aggressive with due to what Piers stated was the former GP's links to an extremist organisation, Piers didn't do the same with Ben Shapiro, even though Shapiro boldly stated he's okay with Israel breaking international law, which in my opinion is supporting extremism and criminal activity. Piers' approximate polite 10-minute pressing of Shapiro in a very civil and at times light-hearted manner took place despite Ben defending 19,000 kids in Gaza being orphaned in the last 4 months, and despite Ben justifying over 30,000 Palestinian people being exterminated since October 2023. Piers was warm and welcoming despite Ben denying war crimes that are, according to international law, clear-cut war crimes, like the IDF dressing up as doctors and patients, then eliminating injured adversaries at point-blank range. And also, despite Ben repeatedly disrespecting a deceased American non-Muslim woman who had her life taken by Israeli forces because she supported Palestine, Piers remained calm and civil despite all of this. Just imagine a Muslim guest had done the same thing in favour of a Muslim country. Piers would have had a meltdown and labelled them a religious extremist. But why not with Shapiro? Instead, Piers chuckled with Ben Shapiro about his corny rap song with Tom McDonald and asked Ben to put in a good word for him with new Zionist mascot Elon Musk. This double standard is why you're being boycotted, Piers, and long may it continue. Let's roll the clip.
When you're fighting a war like Israel is currently fighting in the Gaza Strip, the question is, what level of force must Israel use? All of this could be over literally tomorrow. If the leaders of Hamas walked out, held their hands up, this war would be over like immediately.
Okay, right, let me take you up on that, because I don't think it would end that way, because I think the trouble with what's been going on since we last spoke in terms of proportion is, I saw a BBC report yesterday that the UN were reporting that 19,000 children in Gaza have now been orphaned. Another 10,000 children are reported by the Hamas-run Palestinian Health Authority have been killed. 50 to 60% of Gazan buildings have been severely damaged or completely destroyed. And I don't see any nearness to the end of this, because by Israel's own numbers, they've only killed, if you believe their numbers, and I'm not quite sure how they know this, under 10,000 Hamas terrorists. That means that, you know, 2/3 of the Hamas terrorists are still to be taken out. So this could go on for many months, maybe a year, and those numbers of civilians being killed will exponentially rise, and the devastation in Gaza will reach a point where there is no real Gaza left. And I don't understand here, Ben, what the end game is for Israel. I'm not even sure they've worked it out themselves, other than to just obliterate everything in what many see as an overreaction to what happened by a superpower that hasn't thought through the consequences of taking out the whole of Gaza.
Right now, what Israel is attempting to do and what the long-term plan is going to be, and I said this in the interview, as you'll recall, days after October 7th, is that there would, in fact, be a long-term military occupation of Gaza. The question is going to be when Israel shifts its strategy from a high-intensity campaign to a lower-intensity occupation, which is predictably going to be the result of all of this. The question becomes, who runs the Gaza Strip? And if you are Israel, right now, the military is effectively in control of the Gaza Strip, and that is likely to remain until there is some form of regime in the Gaza Strip that can be put in place. That cannot involve the UN, because the UN, unfortunately, has been cover for Hamas for literally 20 years. And so the question here is a tough one, and it's not an answerable one in kind of right now. What I've been missing in all of this is what exactly is the alternative option that has been presented by anyone other than Israel continuing on its quest.
Only yesterday we saw Israel forces dressing up both as, you know, in Hamas-style clothes and Palestinian clothes to go into a hospital on the West Bank and take out 3 Hamas terrorists. And there are many people, impartial observers, who say that what they did there contravenes international law, that they're effectively committing war crimes because it's a violation of international law to feign protected status, in this case by dressing up as a doctor or patient, in order to invite the confidence of the adversary and then proceed to kill or injure them. And it's also against international law for combatants who've been incapacitated by wounds or sickness and are protected from attack as persons ordered to combat. So if they're paralysed or incapacitated, an attack on that individual is prohibited by international law. So I look at that, it seems to be a prima facie case of Israel breaking the law. Do you defend that?
Yes, I defend that. By all international law, using a hospital as a terror base. That's the war crime. I always find it very bizarre that international law is invoked when it comes to a response to a war crime, but not to the original war crime. That is the war crime?
It is by the letter of the law of international law. Yeah, it is. What they did was a war crime. You can't dress up effectively as doctors and patients and take out people who are being treated, which is what appears to have happened. I don't understand how the kind of devastation we're seeing now in Gaza, the kind of huge death toll on children and women in particular, who have nothing to do with this, obviously, how that is going to not just lead to a whole new radicalisation of Palestinians that will replace Hamas. So, yeah, Hamas may well get permanently dismantled, and Netanyahu's made it clear he'll keep going until the end. Why do you think, Ben, that doing this in the way that Israel's doing it is not just going to lead to a whole new breeding ground of radicalised Palestinians who've lost family members, kids, wives, and so on, and who will want to exact revenge? How does it make Israel safer?
It makes Israel safer by not allowing the governing party in that region to actually be fomenting the violence, providing weaponry, providing education to small children that reinforces all of the hatred and anti-Semitism that has been reinforced in these areas.
You tweeted something yesterday, I think, which got a lot of attention online. It involves a woman called Rael'S Corrie. It was posted yesterday. You originally tweeted it in 2011. And you said, I would love to write a book called Great Idiots of History. Rael'S Corrie would make the list. And it got retweeted yesterday and started fizzing around the internet. When you look back at that tweet, do you have any regrets about the way you phrased that?
Not particularly. I mean, I think that Rael'S Corrie, her death was tragic, but that doesn't mean that she wasn't engaged in deep foolishness. Rael'S Corrie was associated with the International Solidarity Movement. She was in the Gaza Strip in Rafah, Gaza in 2003 when Israel was conducting military operations. Her death, it's tragic. That doesn't mean that she wasn't acting as a useful idiot on behalf of far more nefarious forces.
But she is a young woman who got bulldozed to death. And this was, 13 years ago, and you're a different character now. I just wonder whether, looking back on it, you would have phrased that differently.
Do I feel that she was a fool and that she was acting on behalf of nefarious interests? Absolutely.
Look, credit where credit is due. Piers brought up the fact that 19,000 children have been orphaned in Palestine, as well as the fact that 30,000 civilians have lost their lives, and that dressing up as medical staff and patients in order to attack military opposition who are injured in hospital is a blatant war crime. But is Piers cosplaying as the token pro-Palestinian voice for 5 minutes out of an hour segment to play up for cameras to get his ratings back up because Muslims are refusing to come on his show? I say that because he still hasn't condemned the IDF or labelled them as extremists. Piers has been blocking and taking shots at Muslims on X for boycotting his show, and he did get Islamophobic sodomite Douglas Murray to fill in for him during the holidays. Maybe he sees the dip in ratings his show has had and is attempting to rectify this. Under Piers's respectful and non-confrontational questioning of genocide and war crimes, Shapiro squirmed in his seat somewhat because deep down he knows this is straight up evil, yet Ben still co-signed it because that's what Zionists do. There is no morality in supremacy. Weasel Shapiro even called Israel's dominance and massacre of Palestine a war, as if this is an equal conflict in terms of artillery, financial backing and allied forces that are involved. Ben was totally okay with continued Israeli occupation if and when the violence ends, and someone taking over how Palestine is run in accordance with Israel's interests, not Palestinian civilians' wishes. And good old Ben even stated that the UN can't be involved. The entitlement of these Zionists is absolutely absolutely crazy. I mean, what do you expect from a group that has the power to turn off the water supply and the electricity of another country, as well as stop aid for innocent civilians from getting through to them? Shapiro said this would all end if Hamas would surrender. And once again, credit to Piers for challenging and disagreeing with that statement, which led to Ben saying, what is the alternative to Israel's current conduct? Ben, whose go-to is the cold-blooded elimination of human beings without considering a different alternative first? How about a ceasefire? How about sitting down with whoever is in charge, whether you've labelled them extremists or not, because they label you as extremists also, and you've done more damage than them. Sit down and hash out terms for a peaceful solution. Israel clearly has the military power to enforce it. The reason Israel doesn't want to sit down and discuss a solution is because they have a further agenda of ethnic cleansing and expansion of land, as well as their allies profiting from conflicts via defence companies that manufacture weapons of war. Piers pointed out a clear war crime of pretending to be a protected person, then attacking someone who is unsuspecting while they are injured. And all Ben could sheepishly do was bring up the usual failed propaganda catchphrase of hospitals are being used as bases. Piers asked Ben how massacring 30,000 plus people won't just radicalise more Palestinians, and Ben queued up yet another failed Zionist propaganda catchphrase. They're teaching kids to be extremists, so we might as well get rid of them early. Piers also quite rightly questioned Israel's estimate that they've eliminated 10,000 Hamas members, and he asked how could they know this, as if it was a made-up number, in order to justify continued attacks on civilians, to which Ben had no answer. It's clear Ben Shapiro is an anti-Muslim Zionist mouthpiece, so as Muslims we expect nothing but pro-Israel BS from him, but for him to show no remorse for a fellow American non-Muslim woman losing her life at the hands of Israel and persisting in insulting her by calling her a fool and an idiot, despite her being deceased, shows how disgusting and slimy an individual Ben Shapiro truly is. He has no respect for this deceased young American woman, Rachel Corrie, just because she supported Palestine, and he's okay with her family reliving the anger and pain of her loss through his foul comments about this lady. This just gives us a further insight into the minds of Zionist monsters. My brothers and sisters, be grateful for your lives and for your families, and pray for the people of Palestine. Thank you for watching. Make sure to join my free Telegram group via the link in the description, where we as Muslims can speak freely and without censorship about issues like this, and in order to guide and support each other in our deen. Or if you have more serious personal issues you need help with, please feel free to book a call with me. And remember to like, subscribe and become a channel member for access to exclusive content. Until next time, inshallah, Jazakallah khair.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah